This is graphing video number 1, and in this video, the point of this video is to review some key concepts about graphing that you need to include on your quiz. And some of these things are things that were missed on your graphing assignment, and so I'm just going to go through and clarify some key components that you should include on every graph. Now this example is with a scatter plot. However, the basics of each graph, whether it's a bar graph, a histogram, or a pie chart, all of these components need to be included in order to clarify what the graph is actually representing. Because remember that graphing is a way to communicate your results, and it's important to communicate your results clearly. So the first thing I would like to look at is the general title. So right here, this title that's above the graph is looking at the general relationship that is happening on the graph itself. So here we have what's happening on the y-axis, and over here we have what's happening on the x-axis. So generally we're looking at distance versus time. So we're just going to do that as a general title on the top of the graph. The more detailed title belongs below the graph, and in this title you'll see that there is a figure number, and even though this isn't really part of a lab report, we want to have the practice of putting in figure 1, figure 2, just so when you actually refer to information in a graph or for a graph in a lab report, we know what graph we're referring to. Other components in the title that you need, first of all, you're going to restate what the general relationship is, which is distance versus time. Then you want to state generally what's going on in the graph, what's actually moving, or what is actually being looked at or examined. In this case, it's a toy car going down a ramp. And the last thing is, how is this actually measured? So this is measured by a ticker tape timer, which in your case that doesn't make any sense to you because you don't even know what a ticker tape timer is. It's just it's a measuring device that's used in physics, and but we do want to measure just generally how the information was recorded. And then again, in that title, it gives the reader a general idea of what the data is representing, what's, in this case, what's in motion, and what is actually, or how it's being measured by. The other key components for a graph, you have, in this case, you have line of best fit, which I use just LOBF, right? And that is used for a scatter plot, so it's finding an average of the data points. The other components that you need are on your y-axis. You have your units, right? So this is in meters, plus what you're actually measuring. It doesn't need to be super long, it just needs to indicate what exactly is being measured and what units we're actually going to use. And the same thing would be for your x-axis, right? So in this case we're measuring time, and it's measuring seconds. One of the last things you want to make sure as you're making your graph is that you have an appropriate scale. Your scale is drawn neatly. It has the units that are equally distributed apart, and that you can actually read your numbers. So sometimes, like in this case, right, I put a space between my intervals because I can't squeeze a 3 in there and still be clear on my information. So I just went up by 2's. Still, each square is representing 1. However, I've just gone 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on, just to make it clear on my graph. So again, all of these components are part of every graph that you make. Again, whether it's a histogram, whether it's a bar graph, whether it's a scatter plot, or whether it's a line graph, all that information needs to be included because you need to communicate where the information came from and how it was derived and what kind of units you're using and so on. So For the quiz that's on Monday, you will have to graph some sort of data. And again, when you create your graph, you want to make sure that you have included these key components. There will be a second video put out, and it will be just a kind of a brief overview of the different types of graphs, which we'll just go through a PowerPoint. Again, you want to observe that video as well, just to do a little bit of review of when and where you use the different types of graphs.